Hello?
Good morning, Miss Randolph.
Yeah.
This is Jay Michaels.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, if I'm on the line, you're on the air. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning.
It is an absolute pleasure to speak to you. There are very few legends that we have left in this industry, and you are certainly one of them. So to speak to you definitely is an honor, to say the least. You were around in literally what we call the good old days, in the golden age.
Yes.
You were also known as the Garbo of Detroit, from what I understand.
Some press agent that up.
How was it back then to be in this industry?
Oh, very exciting, because television seemed to be just starting up, and you could run around and look for jobs. Doors were open. Nowadays, everything is locked.
Indeed.
And it was wonderful.
Did you find, now people talk about creativity today, that we have these amazing authors and whatever. Did you find the creativity even more palpable then? Did you find the blast of creativity so strong then?
I guess so. I don't really remember. It was a long time ago. I'm 95.
Oh. And you sound wonderful. May I sound like that at 75? Thank you.
It's easy to sound good. I don't feel that good.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, I'm in a walker,
95.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it shows your resilience right there. There are two shows. There were dozens back then, but there were two shows that when someone talks of the golden age, they always bring up. It's I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners. Now, there are stories about Jackie Gleason. There were stories about rehearsal. There were stories about so many things that happened. What really happened? How was it to film an episode of The Honeymooners?
We never filmed. We were live, absolutely live. Saturday at 8, live.
Oh, that's right. You were on stage. But there was no rehearsal, if I remember correctly, or there was, but Gleason never showed up.
A little. He didn't rehearse much, but he had to do it a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure.
On the day of the show.
On the day of the show. And there are stories all over the place that he just never showed up to rehearsal, that he just walked in for the show.
He showed up. He knew his lines. And sometimes made changes. But yeah, we didn't see much of him, that's for sure. They brought the scripts to our apartment Thursday night, and we had to go into the office on Friday to get the changes that he had made. And then he was not there. And then Saturday he did show up at 11 or 12 o'clock. Uh-huh.
Oh, my. And what was it like? Because nowadays we have these rules. You have to rehearse for a certain amount of time, and there's breaks and all this. How was it to just and the curtain goes up and ready to go? How was a typical episode?
When we were doing it, or you mean
when you were doing it?
Rehearsal of it that day. We rehearsed that day with him, and sometimes go over a couple little spots that he thought weren't right or something. But it went very smoothly, and then we had a bit of time to relax, and I don't know what he did. I hope he studied his lines. And 8 o'clock, we were all ready to go live, and it turned out pretty well.
There were improvisation. Nowadays, we're not allowed to improv, but back then, if I remember correctly, all the stories, sometimes it was a free-for-all, like the Chef of the Future episode, and so many things like that. How was the performance? How was it a normal performance with so little rehearsal?
When most things happened, I wasn't out there. When I was out there with Audrey and we knew our lines, so didn't have to improv or anything. But yeah, I guess on Chef of the Future, they weren't quite sure, what was going to happen. They probably hadn't really rehearsed that one that well, and but it played very well.
Now, it's funny you mentioned Audrey Meadows, because you two were the calm within the storm. You had two wacky vaudevillians around you, and both of you seemed to be the calm within a storm. How was it to maintain when things went crazy?
Oh, easy enough. She was out there for the bad times, I think. I usually wasn't. My part wasn't that big, Sometimes it was, but she had a lot to do. And she was very clever with it. She could ad-lib, and she could get things back on track.
So she found she had to do that in many cases.
In some cases, yeah.
How about you? Did you have to hold your own, especially around Art Carney, who was a brilliant physical comedian?
No, he was sweet and wonderful, and he and I never had any problems.
That's great. Oh, that's wonderful. How is it today for you, looking back on the great times? How's the industry today from your eyes?
Well, it's all very different, and most of it out in Hollywood. Well, it's all over the world now.
Sure.
And, I'm just pretty far removed from it nowadays.
What do you
looks very interesting and exciting.
What do you see that's different in terms of just watching television, just watching what we consider TV shows nowadays? How do you see the difference?
Well, it's all very well written and produced and acted, and they all know what they're doing. It doesn't seem to be much ad-lib stuff. I guess there's some crazy shows on. I probably don't even see them. But I don't know. Everything is different. The whole world is different. Now when we're in this horrible time, oh dear.
Indeed.
Really sad.
How are you holding up during this time?
Well, I'm alone here in my nice apartment, and I have some help, not much. But I don't want people coming in, It's
of
dangerous.
Course. Oh, I know that. For me, just taking out the trash seems to be this adventure. So I understand.
And my only son is busy down in Florida. Well, not busy. He's just sitting around waiting,
Indeed.
And hopefully next month he can maybe get up. I don't know.
What do you think the world? Now you've seen massive changes. You've seen from the golden age to this well prepared world that we're in. Now that we've been hit with this curveball, where do you think the industry? Where do you think TV is going to go after this?
I don't know. It'll always be here. It'll be wonderful. Broadway theater may never recover. That's different. But no, TV will. It'll keep going on and maybe get even better. And who knows? It's hard to tell. You
were on Broadway, yes?
Yes, in what was the name of that one play I was in? It was a flop. It starred Gloria Swanson and Conrad Nagel, so those were big stars. Gloria Swanson was a very big star, but it was still a flop. Well, what was the name of it? No, I can't even think of the name of it. Oh my God! Isn't it awful? You get to be 95 and you do forget things.
You get to be 95. That's wonderful right there. So.
I guess, but it went pretty fast.
Do you think Broadway's going... You said you don't know about Broadway. What do you think's going to happen with live theater?
Well, I don't know. That people are saying, I don't see how it could come back, I mean, wow, it's complicated. They've laid off everybody, and I don't know if it's going to come back. I hope.
Do you think...
to New York for Broadway theater.
There's, and we're talking about two medium right here, they're talking so much because you can get Broadway HD on television now, and you can get the opera on television. There's talk of it that a Broadway show might actually become a TV show, that they may...
Yes.
They may film it. I actually was speaking to a Broadway producer who was talking about filming a Broadway musical, so only the cast has to worry about being together, and they film it in a studio and they play it on television.
Wow, I guess that might be the future. Yeah.
So we might have that. Oh, so you think that's not bad? Well,
it's not the same. But,
no.
I mean, we have to have something.
I agree with you. I'm old enough that I want the good old days, but But I take whatever just to put Broadway and find plays back on track.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss it? You say you're out of it for a while. Do you miss it? Do you miss the wild times? The good old days?
I had quite a bit of it when I was young, and when I got married, I wanted to settle down and have a baby, which I did, and I didn't have to work. My husband was a good provider, and I guess I don't miss it that much.
So you had your glory day, and that
Yes.
and that was fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I've met a lot of television performers who said the same thing. Gabe Kaplan, Gary Berghoff. Many of them have just said, "Okay, had my time. This was wonderful. Thank you. Let's give it to someone else."
Yeah.
Interesting. You go to conventions and expos? Do you still make guest appearances?
No. I'm just too old for that. Not walking well, and I used to do it in the old days.
It has been a pleasure to speak to you. I'm not going to keep you. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and
thank you.
and to hear that one time it was one rehearsal and up you went, and there we have classics.
It was amazing. It really was amazing. But the two men were magic together,
Oh, for sure.
They talk of making a movie about it. They did make one movie, a black movie. It wasn't any good at all. And they're talking of another movie. But there's no Gleason, there's no Carney, and you can't do it without them.
That's right. That was the big... You've just given me my aha moment. People talk about Gilligan's Island being such a silly show and whatever, but the cast made it brilliant. And you four, you set the tone of absolute magic, and it can't be done without you four. Again, you could do all sorts of different things.
We have wonderful writers. Mr. Gleason was hard on the writers.
Oh, indeed.
He would throw things out. He didn't like it. We heard. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking to me. It's an absolute pleasure. Do you ever sit back sometimes and watch an old episode?
Oh, sure.
What do you think?
I can even laugh, yeah.
Can you?
A little bit, yeah.
Do you? And this is an interesting question because do you ever sit back and say, "Well, I was there at the beginning. I was a pioneer." Do you ever take that in?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Terrific. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will let Mark Barron know when the podcast is on, so that you can listen in. And thank you so much. All the best to you. And here's to the doors and the curtains opening very soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Yes.
Ciao.